Hi, my name is Felipa, and this is my journey of reading the Bible for the very first time. This is day 3 of 365 because it is a year-long commitment, and today is September 3rd, 2025. So today, the assignment was to read chapter 6, verse 1, and ending on chapter 8, verse 19. So this is the story of Noah and the ark. And so, very interestingly, the first thing I noticed, of course, this is titled, this chapter 6, The Wickedness of the World. And it says, "And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose." And I find it very interesting that it's the sons of God who saw the daughters of men. And so I will have to sit on that line for a little bit longer because I'm not quite sure what it is meant by that, but I will figure something out. And then we go into talking about how Noah was favored because he walked with God. And so because of this, God favored Noah, which why he gave implicit and clear instructions to Noah to build an ark to save himself, his family, and creatures of the earth. What's really interesting is that at the beginning of this, is unhappy about the wickedness of man. And it says, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And that kind of wording repeats itself at the very end of this section, because in chapter 8, verse 21, God pleased by Noah, and he says, "For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done." So God uses the word imagination once again. So at the beginning, he's saying that, and the thoughts of man and the actions of man are evil, and his is evil continuously. And I also find it interesting because the God says he will destroy man, but he doesn't, God created man. You would think he could just, Thanos snap from Marvel, and he could just make, but he wipes man out with water. And so that makes me think back to my initial video where I said that I have a theory that God or gods or creators potentially unspoken or spoken rules about how they are allowed to conduct themselves when in the creation process. And perhaps one of those rules is that they cannot explicitly say, but they want to destroy their creation. It has to be through the tools and the means with which the creation was created itself. So if that makes sense, if God created man from earth and created, water and life and animal, that the only way that he could destroy that creation is by using the same sort of ingredients that man on earth in the first place, which would be the earthly substance. It would be, earth, water. And so water is featured in here. So that's another thing that I thought about. The thing that I find really clever and very interesting is that God talks about in chapter 7, verse 2, he says that he makes a very clear distinction about clean beasts and clean, and those that are not clean. And so of the clean ones, you can take 7, but of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by 7s, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female. And so there's a clear distinction between clean beasts and presuming dirty beasts. And so it will be very interesting to see if throughout the rest of the Bible, there is an indication as to, a distinction between clean and not clean beasts. So I'm very curious about that. One of the other things that I wrote for myself is I said, I need to dispel any notion of what I think I know of books, storylines, and plots, etc., because this is not a book like any other I have read. And so, in some ways, I'm expecting a continuing storyline. And then there's bits and pieces here where I'm thinking, okay, well, that lining up with what I just read? And is it going to line up with something I'm going to read in the near future? And just having to remind myself to kind of any ideas of what this could or should look like and just let it unfold for itself. And the very last point that I have is it says Noah builds an altar and offers sacrifices in that section. It says, and Noah builded an altar unto the Lord and took a very clean beast and of every clean fowl and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Verse 21. And the Lord smelt a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. And so this I find very, very interesting because it's almost as if God himself or God itself had the opportunity to learn what it is to create something that you are then not fond of and that you have to reckon with. And God himself reacted in a way to destroy his creation. And then this almost makes me think maybe not that he fully regretted it, but Noah softened his heart and made him say that he will not again do this. He won't curse the ground again. Now, what is also interesting, so that part, it feels like God is going through a learning process himself about this when he creates something, and in this case, how it did not work out for him as he envisioned it. So there's disappointment there. The other thing that I find interesting is the wording, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake. And that makes me feel as though God is saying he's not going to punish the earth and all of its inhabitants for the sake of the man who is sin or wicked. So almost like he's protecting the earth, and he feels as though earth was an innocent party in this whole creation. Yeah, it's interesting, this little part here about God's reflection about this whole process of creation and how he didn't envision the process turning out the way he did it. So tomorrow is day 4 of 365. I will probably reread this section again because over time, overnight, when I come back to it again, I might have more revelations or more thoughts. And of course, as always, if you have any ideas or suggestions or you want to discuss something, please leave it in the comment below.